I'm gonna go live just a little bit early, give people a chance to shuffle on in here. What? Okay, we are ready to rock. Now, there's a few dialogues we want to do, and I'm debating. We're not going to do Ion yet because there's a special treat when we do Ion. So let's not do that. This is now live. Let's go do all the linky stuff we got to do. This is class 4 of our weekly Monday um, get-togethers on the year 2 material where we're doing some symposium classes on different philosophers who we want to do a little bit more. Here we go. Starting. Okay, so we'll hit post and we'll say pin that. And then we're going to say copy this, copy link. So while everyone has a chance to shuffle in here, we are gonna just put a couple of links. Link to join. And then we're gonna look for the spaces that is scheduled. Hmm. What happened to that? What happened to that? Why is it not there? Hmm. I had it there. Let's see. Let's see. StreamYard, live stream, blah, blah, blah. Of course it was. When did we schedule this space? X. If I could follow the train of a conversation or the scheduling, a little calendar thing that would allow things to be scheduled, this would be a little easier, but I cannot find it. So we are going to start in just a few moments. Yeah, I can't find it. It's just disappeared. Oh, it says I'm hosting right now, but I'm not hosting right now. This isn't a space. Hey, where did it go? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? Why? Why are you doing this? Hmm. So, what's your deal, X? What's your deal? I just sworn I did that. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the link is missing because I never created it. Okay, we are going to be starting 4 of our symposium class. Now, this is in the context of the year 2 material. So we do the cherry picking year 1 stuff. Then we start right at the beginning and we go chronologically and with a narrative storytelling, some powerful lenses. We get to look at all of philosophy again. And then the 3rd year, we do all of it through Nietzsche's eyes and with his hammer with Zarathustra. Those are the 3 backbone courses for years 1, 2, and 3. But in year 2, there are a few philosophers that we want to spend a little bit more time on. We spend a good amount of time, but we want to spend more time on them. And so there's these complementary classes that go along with the year two backbone material. And one of them is dialoguing with Plato. So the last few Mondays we've done 3 so far on 2 Mondays. We did 2 on the first one, but we're not gonna do that anymore. From now on, we're gonna do 1 dialogue on a Monday evening at this time, and then right after that, I've scheduled a Twitter space for people who've been listening in and who wanna come in and contribute, ask questions, join the conversation there. On Twitter, where this is streaming right now, on the pinned post in the comments, there's a link where you can join the live stream. So if you want to come in here and have some of the conversation or do some of the readings, you still got a couple of minutes to do that before we get started. Now, there's a few of these dialogues I haven't read before. In fact, the first one we did, I've never read. It was quite good. I'm thinking about jumping into another one of the ones that I haven't read before, and we'll have a lot of chances to pause and do some commentary and some lecturing and all that fun stuff. But there's some others that I really want to do. Credo and the Apology, and Meno and all of this fun stuff. So, well, that's not even in the first list here. So, I think what we're going to do now, for those of you who still haven't figured out, because there's no reason to figure it out, it was a complete bloody mystery. Why I was playing Alanis Morissette at the opening of the first one of these, just playing some music. When we do Ion, which is going to be happening at some point in the near future, we have 2 artists who are going to come on and we are going to interview them and talk about the philosophy of art, their process. And one of them is a somewhat known musician who has a new album coming out soon. And we might even be able to hear a little bit of that music. So that's going to be pretty fun. And that'll be in the next month or two. Uh, it'll be quite enjoyable. And we'll talk more about those 2 artists and those other details at some point in the future. So we can't do Ion today, but we're going to try to stick with sort of the first period works. We've done Laches, Charmides, and Euthyphro. And I really like the Euthyphro. So we're going to do Lysis tonight. Lyses. And friendship. That sounds delightful. Okay. Persons in the dialogue are, and again, if you click the link to join, I'll see you here and I'll add you in when I'm, oh, let me. Anybody knows how to take the Wave XLR Elgato software, hardware, equipment that I have and make it not auto change how loudly it picks up on the mic? Because sometimes I'll talk slowly and then it'll jump up. If there's anybody who has some advice on that, that would be great. I cannot figure out how to get it to stop doing that. In any event, we're going to be starting real soon. It's fun, right? It's going to be fun. So we've got some good things planned, some exciting stuff coming. For right now, we are going to read our 4th dialogue. And remember, on Mondays, just like on Wednesdays, when we're finished, there's going to be a live Twitter space. So if you've got things I've said that you disagree with, commentary you want to add, some insights, historical or literary references, or other things you want to highlight. If you want to argue with Socrates, we can put on our Socrates cap and try to argue back and do a little ghost arguing there. So we'll have a lot of great discussion afterwards, and it's scheduled for about 2 hours from now, which we will definitely have this done by then. So we might start it a little early or late, but we'll start it as soon as the live stream is over. We're going to give just a few more minutes before we get started. I just settled on doing the lyces, or friendship. And oh, if anybody wants to retweet this, I forgot to send out all of the invites to the regulars who like watching this in the messages. So feel free to retweet if you want to do that. And if you give me just one moment, I'll send a couple of links out there. Is that correct? I don't think that's correct. Let's go here. here, and we're going to start where. Yeah, go ahead and repeat that if you want. Okay, let's jump in. This is gonna be fun. We've learned a few things so far that have started to emerge as we're reading Plato's dialogues. And if you've read them a lot of times and you've studied it a lot, you know how rich they are and how much fun they are to come back to again and how much more you get out of them each time. If this is your first time, as it is with me with some of these dialogues, reading any or all of his dialogues, some things are emerging that we can pay attention to. So we've heard about, the Socratic method, but now we're sort of getting the puzzle pieces of what goes into that. We've had a little promissory note here, but pretty soon I'm not going to be able to stay away from the credo and the apology and the Meno and all of that. So we'll be reading those before too long. And there's some things he mentions in those dialogues where the character Socrates says, "Look, I'm going to pull the veil away here. I'm about to die. I'm about to drink the hemlock. So let's talk about the fact that we've been doing. You know what we've been doing. We've been talking." And we've been arguing and we've been having conversations like friends and we've been trying to sharpen our ideas and work out the right propositional way of expressing the truth of things, and we've done it all within the realm of ethics and how to live and how a man should live and what the good life would be and if it's accomplishable and how to get to it. But and he explains a little bit of his method here, one of these insights. He says, but we haven't got any answers. Right? In the early dialogues, Socrates, the character from Plato, and most scholars think this is more like the authentic Socrates, although we can debate that. He ends all of the dialogues in a state of perplexity. And that's one of the things we've seen, right? We've read three dialogues now, and he's asking a person who's talking with him, he's asking his interlocutor for a definition of something that the 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 dialogue partner claims to know. I know what piety is, says Euthyphro. Of all men in Athens, I am the one who knows exactly what it is that pleases the gods and what it is that they're displeased by. And I'm the expert on that topic. And uh, justice. What did we look at? We looked at how to educate the young and virtue and whether or not athletic virtue or martial, like MMA fighting, is useful for educating the young, that type of thing. Whatever the question is, it's always in the context of ethics and how to live. But furthermore, um, Socrates demands a definition. He says, "Look, you claim to know, so tell me, give me a statement that would allow me to differentiate between all actions, all individuals, all inclinations, all events." To say these are the pious ones, these are the impious ones, and these are the ones that have nothing to do with piety. Okay, that's what he's demanding. And often, someone in Athens will say, "Of course, I'm a judge, I'm a soothsayer, I'm the guy that really knows." And he'll say, "Here's the definition, let me teach it to you." And Socrates says, "Great, I'm so glad you told me that because I don't know. I don't actually know what the definition of this is, and you do, it seems. So thank you for giving me a definition." If the person doesn't give him a definition, but just gives examples, he says, "I was really looking for a definition. Let me illustrate what it is I want." And then, "Oh, okay, I can do that for you." But in any event, they get to a definition, and then Socrates says, "That's great. You've given me the answer, but I don't quite understand it yet." And then he starts asking questions. And what happens is every single definition has implications that contradict each other or is incoherent or absurd or has consequences which are absurd. For some reason, everybody in the conversation, the debate agrees that definition doesn't work. And then occasionally, some of the characters, as we'll see, say, "Hey, Socrates, stop with this game of yours. Stop tearing down other people's ideas. You give us your definition of this." And he always says, "Well, I don't know. I said at the start, I don't know. Why are you demanding that I give an answer? I'm telling you, I wish I knew. It seems to me like the most important thing I could have and the most useful use of our time would be to try to get at a definition of something like this. And nothing could be more valuable to us. We're going to die. Let's make sure we live a good life. How can we do that if we don't even know the nature of justice or what courage is or anything like that? Okay. So he always ends, and these are the first third dialogues that we're looking at. Socrates himself and all his interlocutors, they end in a state of perplexity. But there's a few other features that have emerged that we've noticed. They also end with an affirmation, usually, of I think we've seen it all 3 times so far, uh, or at least twice. Maybe Euthyphro ran away, but Socrates shouting after him is sort of adding this affirmation, which is the people still in the conversation who haven't excused themselves are affirming that we should keep talking about this again tomorrow. This would be the thing we should be spending all our time thinking on and meditating on and focusing on. We don't have an answer yet, but let's go get a drink and some smokes and let's keep this going till 3 in the morning and then tomorrow maybe we'll have a chance to talk about it some more and let's even organize our lives around that. So so we've seen a few things emerge. One, Socrates is demanding a definition. Now, we're going to read a few dialogues, like I mentioned before, where it's closer to his death, where he says, "Let me pull the veil back a bit and let me explain to you that I don't think we will ever have a definition of these things this side of death. I think what we're trying to do is orient ourselves towards the arche, the source of all truth being goodness, justice, and love, and then to relate to it properly, to get to know it like a friend, to say, oh, this person is a lot like my friend. Oh, this thing is a lot like beauty because I know beauty qua beauty. So now I can see accurately that this is beautiful and that's ugly. And I'm not just arbitrarily making those judgments. Oh, this is justice. Why? It's a lot like that justice that I'm kind of getting to know, but can't really define and wrap my mind around fully or something like that. Okay. So, and we've also mentioned a few times that the Greeks had to invent the word irony to deal with Socrates. And so he's demanding a definition as if that would be the prize, but he's doing something else. And we'll get to look at those other dialogues where he says that it's a promissory note for now. But in any event, what else have we seen that's emerged? Well, we've started to see not a pattern, but a series of categories that we could start to make up here of ways that characters interact with Socrates. So I had said this before. I won't go into such a long lecture on it today, but it's not accidental in my view, that Plato is writing in dialogues, that he's writing in narrative, that he has characters in a play. The philosophy that Socrates slash Plato, and we'll have plenty of time to discuss when is this the voice of Socrates, when is it the voice of Plato, and to debate that, but that the philosophy that the meaning, the truths, the profundity that are trying to get across are too deep for propositional words to fully encompass. That the realm of the mythopoetic, there's Socrates is prophetic, as we'll see. Uh, y- you may not understand that the word prophecy means something. It means something today as it did back then. And Socrates is absolutely sees himself as a prophetic character. He does prophesy things, which will speak to us in the future. And even Euthyphro, the soothsayer, prophesies inaccurately about both himself, I think, and Socrates and the outcome of the case. But there's something that requires spiritual script let's say scriptural language. I like just saying the mythopoetic, but Plato, one of the reasons we're focusing here is that with the consummate thinkers, they're often doing this. They'll have arguments, they'll have propositions, they'll develop logical principles, they'll do all of that stuff. Yes, we're definitely doing philosophy here. But to really get at the truth that these specific philosophers are trying to get at, you kind of have to get into metaphor and poetry and prophecy and characterological things and storytelling. So putting that aside, why did I bring that up specifically for today is that we're starting to be able to put people in categories because the way narrative works is there's a character. Well, how do you get to know the character? Well, you get to know him or her by the way they act and the way they interact. But what does that mean? Well, they're starting in one place, they're trying to get to another place. The journey has obstacles and it has aids to that journey. And so you get to see that. But also, what happens is the character smashes against other characters. And the sparks that fly give us some illumination into both characters, right? So we get to know Socrates because of the way he responds to Euthyphro, because of the way he talks to Meno, because of the way that Anytus threatens him and leaves, right? So the characters on both sides are illuminated by the smashing together and the way they interact. So we're going to see Meno is going to respond to this game that Socrates is playing in a very different way than Euthyphro did, right? Anytus is in one of these dialogues at least, and he's going to be behaving differently. And it's going to be, you're going to see anger in the face or you're going to see kind words. And, so the point is that this is narrative. It's a play in a sense. It's very much heavy on the dialogue, obviously, but it's it's characterological, that what we're trying to get at is a way of being in the world that is Socratic. That's one of the things, if I could wave a magic wand and hope that this class would accomplish, is that all of us would come to a place where Socrates and his voice and his friendship and his personality are more real to us and maybe plague us and maybe live with us and travel with us as we move forward. Okay, so with all of that said, we're gonna read another dialogue that I haven't read before. So this is gonna be fun. And, the first one we read, I hadn't read before, and it was dang good. So this is called Lysis or Friendship. Persons of the dialogue: Socrates, who is the narrator, Menexenus, Hippothales, Lysis, Tisippus, those are the characters. Scene: a newly erected palestra outside the walls of Athens. Socrates. I was going from the academy straight to the Lyceum, intending to take the outer road, which is close under the wall. When I came to the postern gate of the city, which is by the fountain of, of Panops, I fell in with Let me turn this off. I fell in with Hippothales. Someone remind me to turn off the audio on this before I start next time. My apologies. I fell in with Hippothales, the son of Hieronymus, and Ctesippus, the Pyrenean, and a company of young men who were standing with them. Hippothales, seeing me approach, asked whence I came and whither I was going. I am going, I replied, from the academy straight to the Lyceum. Then come straight to us, he said, and put in here. You may as well. Who are you? I said, and where am I to come? He showed me an enclosed space and an open door over against the wall. And there, he said, is the building at which we all meet, and a goodly company we are. And what is this building? I asked, and what sort of entertainment have you? The building, he replied, is a newly erected palestra, and the entertainment is generally conversation, to which you are welcome. Thank you, I said. And is there any teacher there? Yes, he said, your old friend and admirer, Mycos. Indeed, I replied, he is a very eminent professor. Are you disposed, he said, to go with me and see them? Yes, I said, but I should like to know first what is expected of me and who is the favorite among you. Some persons have one favorite, Socrates, and some another, he said. And who is yours? I asked. Tell me that, Hippothales. At this he blushed, and I said to him, Oh, Hippothales, thou son of Hieronymus, do not say that you are, or that you are not, in love. The confession is too late, for I see that you are not only in love, but are already far gone in your love. Simple and foolish as I am, the gods have given me the power of understanding affections of this kind. Whereupon he blushed more and more. Ctesippus said, I like to see you blushing, Hippothales, and hesitating to tell Socrates the name. When, if he were with you, but for a very short time, you would have plagued him to death by talking about nothing else. Indeed, Socrates, he has literally deafened us and stopped our ears with the praise of Lyces. And if he is a little intoxicated, there is a very likelihood that we may have our sleep murdered with a cry of Lyces. His performances in prose are bad enough, but nothing at all in comparison with his verse. And when he drenches us with his poems and other compositions, it is really too bad. And worse still is his manner of singing them to his love. He has a voice which is truly appalling, and we cannot help hearing him. And now, having a question put to him by you, behold, he is blushing. Who is Lyces? I said. I suppose that he must be young, for the name does not recall anyone to me. Why, he is. Why, he said. His father being a very well known man, he retains his patronymic and is not as yet commonly called by his own name. But although you do not know his name, I am sure that you must know his face, for that is quite enough to distinguish him. But tell me, whose son is he? I said. He is the eldest son of Democritus, of the deme of Axon. Ah, Hippocles, I said, what a noble and really perfect love you have found. I wish that you would favor me with the exhibition which you have been making to the rest of the company, and then I shall be able to judge whether you know what a lover ought to say about his love, either to the youth himself or to others. Nay, Socrates, he said, you surely do not attach any importance to what he is saying. Do you mean, I said, that you disown the love of the person whom he says that you love? No, but I deny that I make verses or address compositions to him. He is not in his right mind, said Ctesippus. He is talking nonsense and is stark mad. Oh, Hippothales, I said, if you have ever made any verses or songs in honor of your favorite, I do not want to hear them, but I want to know the purport of them, that I may be able to judge of your mode of approaching your fair one. Ctesippus will be able to tell you, he said, for if, as he avers, the sound of my words is always dinning in his ears, he must have a very accurate knowledge and recollection of them. Yes, indeed, said Ctesippus. I know only too well, and very ridiculous the tale is, for although he is a lover and very devotedly in love, he has nothing particular to talk about to his beloved, which a child might not say. Now, is not that ridiculous? He can only speak of the wealth of Democritus, which the whole city celebrates, and grandfather Lyces, and the other ancestors of the youth, and their stud of horses, and their victory at the Pythian Games, and the Isthmus, and at Nemea with 4 horses and single horses. These are the tales which he composes and repeats, and there is greater twaddle still. Only the day before yesterday, he made a poem in which he described the entertainment of Heracles, and who was a connection of the family, setting forth how, in virtue of this relationship, he was hospitably received by an ancestor of Lysis. This ancestor was himself begotten of Zeus by the daughter of the founder of the deme. And these are the sort of old wives' tales which he sings and recites to us, and we are obliged to listen to him. When I heard this, I said, O ridiculous Hippothales, How can you be making and singing hymns in honor of yourself before you have won? But my songs and verses, he said, are not in honor of myself, Socrates. You think not, I said. Nay, but what do you think? He replied. Most assuredly, I said, those songs are all in your own honor. For if you win your beautiful love, your discourses and songs will be a glory to you, and may be truly regarded as hymns of praise composed in honor of you. All right, let's pause for a moment. This is pretty good. Let's pause. Two things we might mention. One, a few times in the dialogues, we'll see at the very beginning of the Republic when we get there, there's a little bit of drama about whether or not Socrates is being invited or forced or seeking out, or how is it that the conversation gets started in the first place? And that might be more significant than it seems at first. So, in contradistinction to the Republic, where a slave runs up and says, Socrates, Socrates, please, my master wants you to wait here. Socrates is leaving the Olympic Games when there's going to be a relay race on horseback where the horseback riders will pass the torch one to another. It's supposed to be a pretty grand spectacle, and everybody's staying to watch it. But Socrates has done his sacrificing and he's leaving as if that's not important to him. And then they come up to him and they say, "Hey, we caught up with you. Are you leaving? You can't leave, man. There's gonna be a great show, and besides, we just wanna hang out with you tonight. We wanna talk and talk and talk, and that would be great, and why are you gonna leave? Come on, man, that's not right." And he goes, "Well, it was my plan was to come and do this and then go leave." And they say, "Well, look, we're a lot more than you are, and we could force you to stay." They're kinda high on all this Olympic game stuff. They're like, "What if we told you we're not gonna let you leave?" But it's kinda like, they're clearly friends. And Socrates says, "Well, is there maybe not another option?" "What's that?" "Well, I could convince you to let me leave." Right? Which is agreeing to be in a conversation with them, which is, of course, not gonna end. Um, but the idea is that, it's a juxtaposition of valuations, right? And I think it would be reading too much into it to say Socrates despises all of the physical values of what the Greeks valued. He was a very courageous war hero, Socrates was, and but he was ugly, and he wasn't sort of the person who would be valued with those specific Greek measurements of value. And Nietzsche famously said Socrates was ugly and therefore he invented a new wrestling match that he could beat people at, which is a little unfair, but um, but but a heck of a thing to say. In any event, you can just see the juggling between the two. But now this dialogue here is going to be about friendship. It's going to be about love. We know about the idea of platonic love, right? Platonic from Plato, so we might just get a good definition of that in here as we go. People think of platonic love as sort of like similar to being friend zoned or something, but it's a it's another inversion of values, right? So there's this idea that so I think Plato has this idea of three types of friendship, which is in the Republic. Uh, Friendships that are based on utility. Okay, so you walk into the hardware store and you're a regular, and the shop owner greets you in a friendly manner, says your name, how you doing. You guys are friends because you both benefit from the fact that he gives you a deal and tells you what the right tool to buy is, and you come in and spend money with him. And so it's just sort of founded on the utility of you're useful to me and I'm useful to you. And then there's friendships based on pleasure, which are like well, we could use sophisticated or unsophisticated examples of these things. Let's just say, the frat house with the buddies and they like to drink together, but they're not, it's not clear that they're encouraging each other to do anything that's good for each other. And, you think of like a pack of wolves and, who's hitting on whose girlfriend the moment so and so is out of the room. It's like, what kind of friendship is this? Well, it's a friendship where we're all mutually aimed at pleasure, but we're not really aimed at each other in any way. And then or not fully, in the pure form of that category. And then there's this other form of friendship, which is at its fundamental, it's defined as individuals who appreciate each other for the fact that they are both mutually aimed at the good, right? I'm trying to figure out what the good is. You're trying to figure out what the good is. We can have dialogue together. We can have conversation and communion together. We can both benefit from that. Maybe you've got a different idea than I do on something. And so we can debate it out, but we're valuing the debate, right? You see all the nonsense on social media of It's like, what is the point? You've gone lower than just trying to convert somebody. You've gone to just trying to declare snarkily that you're the winner or something. It's just so lame. But but there's a richness in the kind of friendship that can be had and the dialogues that can be had between people who think, one of the definitions I think that Plato gives it is something like one soul in two bodies. It's like I can't be fully what I need to be except that I have you, and so our complementary and contradictory and challenging and cooperative competitive elements, all of this mingling together is allowing us both to develop our souls and to get closer to the good. Okay, so he gets into the conversation here, uh, and it's going to be about friendship. Maybe it'll be about love. It's clearly, right? Hippothales is in love. Hippothales is smitten. Hippothales is nonstop talking. He's like a, let's say he's like I don't know what the word is. Um, He's like some 19-year-old girl who's babbling on about her new squeeze. He's like, "Hey, this dude, he's so great and he's awesome and, his family's really cool and look at how awesome he is," and he's just like not he won't talk about anything else, all right? So, Hippothales is smitten, and Socrates says, "Well, tell me, what's the nature of how you talk about this object of your love?" And he says, well, the way he talks about him is he just keeps talking about how great the guy is. And then Socrates starts to say, you're really praising yourself. You're not really praising him. And the hint here already is that, well, you expect to have him. You expect to be successful, right? You're not keeping this a secret. You think you're going to um, have a love affair with this other young man. And, so all the things you praise about him, if you conquer him, those become your victories, right? I'm the one who bed the great one, and that's why I keep talking about how great he is, that type of thing, right? So there's another Nietzsche had a line about this too. It's very important. But there's another ancient Greek principle, which is something akin to the way Nietzsche put it is you can only have enemies that you hate, but never those that you despise, right? We had talked about once, and we'll talk about it again. There's a line in the poetry of Ovid's Metamorphoses where Apollo is making fun of Cupid, little baby Cupid with the bow and arrow, and saying you shouldn't, he's making fun of him after he's had a great victory with his bow and arrow. And then Cupid says to him, "Listen, buddy, all of your accomplishments, everything you've ever accomplished will be accredited to me instead of you because you slew the dragon Python. But I'm about to bring you low. I'm about to defeat you. And when I defeat you, I'll be known as the man who defeated Python." So there's this idea that you should praise your enemies because their victories become your victories once you triumph over them. And similarly, analogously, maybe as the same thing though, Socrates is starting to say to this guy, it seems like you think you're in love with him and that's why you're praising him, but really you have designs on him, right? You want something from him that would allow all your praise of him to now come back to you again. So are you really in love? Or is this something else? So let's see how he goes with this. Most assuredly, I said, those songs are all in your own honor. For if you win, your beautiful love, your discourses and songs will be a glory to you, and may be truly regarded as hymns of praise composed in honor of you, who have conquered and won such a love. But if he slips away from you, the more you have praised him, the more ridiculous you will look, having lost this fairest and best of blessings. And therefore, the wise lover does not praise his beloved until he has won him, because he is afraid of accidents. There is also another danger. The fair, when anyone praises or magnifies them, are filled with the spirit of pride and vainglory. Do you not agree with me? This is a strategic point. He says, yes, he said. And the more vainglorious they are, the more difficult is the capture of them. I think you're right. I believe you, he says. So, what should you say of a hunter who frightened away his prey and made the capture of the animals which he is hunting more difficult? He would be a bad hunter, undoubtedly. he responds. Yes, says Socrates, and if, instead of soothing him, he were to infuriate them with words and songs, that would show a great want of wit. Do you not agree? Yes. And now reflect, Hippothales, and see whether you are not guilty of all these errors in writing poetry. For I can hardly suppose that you will affirm a man to be a good poet who injures himself by his poetry. Assuredly not, he said. Such a poet would be a fool. And this is the reason why I take you into my counsels, Socrates, and I shall be glad of any further advice which you may have to offer. Will you tell me by what words or actions I may become endeared to my love? All right, so we're going to see we're seeing kind of it's different than Euthyphro, it's different than Meno. We're seeing it's like, okay, teach me, Socrates. I'd like to learn something here. But it's also a bit of utility, and there's definitely still the strategic element going on here, at least from one side of this. But also, Socrates is at least baiting him with hints of being able to give that type of advice at minimum. Okay, so how can I get the one I love, right? Socrates says that is not easy to determine, I said. But if you will bring your love to me, I and will let me talk with him, I may perhaps be able to show you how to converse with him instead of singing and reciting in the fashion of which you are accused. There will be no difficulty in bringing him, he replied, if you will only go with Ctesippus into the palestra and sit down and talk. I believe that he will come of his own accord, for he is fond of listening, Socrates. And as this is the festival of the Hermea, the young men and boys are all together, and there is no separation between them. He will be sure to come, but if he does not, Ctesippus, with whom he is familiar, and whose relation Menaxenus is is his great friend, shall call him. That will be the way, I said. Thereupon I led Ctesippus into the palestra, and the rest followed. So they finally got agreement. They're all going to go into this conversation hall and talk. Upon entering, we found that the boys had just been sacrificing, and this part of the festival was nearly at an end. They were all in their white array, and games at dice were going on among them. Most of them were in the outer court amusing themselves, but some were in a corner of the apoditerium, playing at odd and even with a number of dice, which they took out of little wicker baskets. There was also a circle of lookers on. Among them was Lyces. He was standing with the other boys and youths, having a crown upon his head like a fair vision, and not less worthy of praise for his goodness than for his beauty. We left them and went over to the opposite side of the room, where, finding a quiet place, we sat down, and then we began to talk. This attracted Lyces, who was constantly turning round to look at us. He was evidently wanting to come to us. For a time he hesitated and had not the courage to come along. But first of all, his friend Menexenus, leaving his play, entered the palestra from the court, and when he saw Tes- Ctesippus and myself, was going to take a seat by us, and then Lyces, seeing him, followed and sat down by his side, and the other boys joined. I should observe that Hippothales, when he saw the crowd, got behind them, where he thought that he would be out of sight of Lyces, lest he should anger him, and there he stood and listened. I turned to Menexenus and said, Son of Demophon, which of you two youths is the elder? That is a matter of dispute between us, he said. And which is the nobler? Is that also a matter of dispute? Yes, certainly. And another disputed point is, which is the fairer? The two boys laughed. I shall not ask which is the richer of the two, I said, for you are friends, are you not? Certainly, they replied. And friends have all things in common, so that one of you can be no richer than the other if you say truly that you are friends. They assented. I was about to ask which was the juster of the two, and which was the wiser of the two, but at this moment Menexenus was called away by some by someone who came and said that the gymnastic master wanted him. I suppose that he had to offer sacrifice. So he went away, and I asked Laces some more questions. I dare to say, Laces, I said, that your father and mother love you very much. Certainly, he said. And they would wish you to be perfectly happy? Yes. But do you think that anyone is happy who is in the condition of a slave and who cannot do what he likes? I should think not, indeed, he said. And if your mother and father love you and desire that you should be happy, no one can doubt that they are very ready to promote your happiness. Certainly, he replied. And do they then permit you to do what you like and never rebuke you or hinder you from doing what you desire? Yes, indeed, Socrates, there are a great many things which they hinder me from doing. What do you mean? I said. Do they want you to be happy and yet hinder you from doing what you like? For example, if you want to mount one of your father's chariots and take the reins at a race, they will not allow you to do so. They will prevent you? Certainly, he said. They will not allow me to do so. Whom then will they allow? There's a charioteer whom my father pays for driving. And do they trust a hireling more than you? And may he do what he likes with the horses? And do they pay him for this? They do. But I dare say that you may take the whip and guide the mule cart if you like. They will permit that. Permit me? Indeed, they will not. Then I said, may no one use the whip to the mules? Yes, he said, the muleteer. And is he a slave or a free man? Slave, he said. And do they esteem a slave of more value than you who are their son? And do they entrust their property to him rather than to you, and allow him to do what he likes when they prohibit you? Answer me now. Are you your own master, or do they not even allow that? Nay, he said. Of course they do not allow it. Then you have a master. Yes, my tutor. There he is. Is he a slave? To be sure, he is our slave, he replied. Surely, I said, this is a strange thing. For a free man should be that a free man should be governed by a slave? And what does he do with you? He takes me to my teachers. You do not mean to say that your teachers also rule over you? Of course they do. Then I must say that your father is pleased to inflict many lords and masters on you. But at any rate, when you go home to your mother, she will let you have your own way and will not interfere with your happiness. Her wool or the piece of cloth which she is weaving are at your disposal. I am sure that there is nothing to hinder you from touching her wooden spathe or her comb or any other of her spinning implements. Nay, Socrates, he replied, laughing. Not only does she hinder me, but I should be beaten if I were to touch one of them. Well, I said, this is amazing. And did you ever behave ill to your father or your mother? No, indeed, he replied. But why then are they so terribly anxious to prevent you from being happy and doing as you like, keeping you all day long in subjection to another, and, in a word, doing nothing which you desire, so that you have no good, as would appear, out of their great possessions, which are under the control of anybody rather than of you, and have no use of your own fair person, which is tended and taken care of by another, while you, Lyces, are master of nobody and can do nothing. Why? He said, Socrates. The reason is that I am not of age. I doubt whether that is the real reason, I said, for I should imagine that your father Democritus and your mother do permit you to do many things already and do not wait until you are of age. For example, if they want anything read or written, you, I presume, would be the first person in the house who is summoned by them. Very true. And you would be allowed to write or read the letters in any order which you please, or to take up the lyra and tune the notes, and play with the fingers, or strike with the plectrum, exactly as you please, and neither father nor mother would interfere with you. That is true, he said. Then what can be the reason, Lyces, I said, why they allow you to do the one and not the other. I suppose he said, because I understand the one and not the other. Yes, my dear youth, I said. The reason is not any deficiency of years, but a deficiency of knowledge. And whenever your father thinks that you are wiser than he is, he will instantly commit himself and his possessions to you. I think so. I said. And about your neighbor, too. Does not the same rule hold as about your father? If he is satisfied that you know more of housekeeping than he does, he will continue to administer his affairs himself. Or will he commit them to you? I think he would commit them to me. I mean, if I knew more. Will not the Athenian people too entrust their affairs to you when they see that you have wisdom enough to manage them? Yeah. And oh, let me put another case, I said. There is the great king. He has an eldest son who is the prince of Asia. Suppose that you and I go to him and establish to his satisfaction that we are better cooks than his son. Will he not entrust to us the prerogative of making soup and putting in anything that we like while the pot is boiling, rather than to the prince of Asia, who is his son? Well, to us, clearly. And we shall be allowed to throw in salt by handfuls, whereas the son will not be allowed to put in as much as he can take up between his fingers, of course. Or suppose again that the son has bad eyes. Will he allow him, or will he not allow him, to touch his own eyes if he thinks that he has no knowledge of medicine? He will not allow him. Whereas if he supposes us to have knowledge of medicine, he will allow us to do what we like with him, even to open his eyes wide and sprinkle ashes upon them, because he supposes that we know what is best. That is true, says the youth. And everything in which we appear to him to be wiser than himself or his son, he will commit to us. That's very true, Socrates, he replied. Then now, my dear Lyces, I said, you perceive that in things which we know, everyone will trust us, Hellenes and barbarians, men and women, and we may do as we please about them, and no one will like to interfere with us. We shall be free and masters of others, and these things will be really ours, for we shall be benefited by them. But in things of which we have no understanding, no one will trust us to do as seems good to us. They will hinder us as far as they can. And not only strangers, but father and mother, and the friend, if there be one, who is the dearer still, will also hinder us. And we shall be subject to others. And these things will not be ours, for we shall not be benefited by them. Do you agree? All right, before we move on, there's, there's some things we'll go back and talk about later. We've skipped past them a little bit, maybe. I'm sure you feel them in the air. But this bit here, so first of all, we can't avoid it. First of all, it's almost as if he's, with more mature men who claim to have knowledge, he demands a definition from them, and then they have a conversation of this nature, but it's to explode the definition. But Socrates is being quite gentle with the youth. Uh, this youth who's having conversation, he's leading him towards knowledge, just like he did when he took the slave boy and showed that the slave boy knows everything about geometry, although he's not been educated in it yet, because he doesn't give him the answers. He just asks him questions and lets the other come to their own conclusions. So he's doing that here, but he's also sort of looking like he's going a few different directions. He's kind of establishing a base for something. But now he's come to one thing he wants the youth to grab onto, which is master yourself or you'll be mastered by others. Develop knowledge, skill, training, all these things that you're forced to do, that you have a guard making you, oh, here are your lessons. You should see them as the source of empowerment for yourself. That if you discipline yourself to go and read and study and work out and do these things, that you, because you have disciplined yourself, you won't require discipline from others, and that it's inevitable that everybody will oppose you if you don't know more than they do and you start trying to grab at things. But people will beg you to take over what you are more competent in than they are. So this is the nature of the world, he's telling the youth. Say it's not that you're made to do something. It's not that people are stopping you because of your age. Get the knowledge, get the wisdom. If you have the knowledge and the wisdom of how to ride a horse, people will be begging you to ride their horse. If you have the knowledge of how to break a horse, people will be asking you to come. They'll pay you to break a horse. So you're kept away from the horses for now, not because of your age, but because of your lack of knowledge. And it's quite nice what he's telling him. All right, so the boy says he assented. And shall we be friends to others? Says Socrates. And will any others love us in as far as we are useless to them? "Oh, certainly not," says the boy. Neither can your father or mother love you, nor can anybody love anybody else insofar as they are useless to them. No, says the boy. And therefore, my boy, if you are wise, all men will be your friends and kindred, for you will be useful and good. But if you are not wise, neither father nor mother nor kindred nor anyone else will be your friends. And in matters of which you have as yet no knowledge, can you have any conceit of knowledge? So he's going to start going on to another question now. But he's hinting at the good life here. Now, here's something important. We talked about this last time with the Euthyphro and many times. Plato is writing these dialogues after Socrates is dead. He's just an old chunk of coal. I'm going to be the world's best friend. I'm going to go around shaking everybody's hand. Socrates is saying this is the way that you can be friend to the entire world. But the world around Socrates, sons, a couple of his actual friends, voted for him to die as a result of his being motivated to do nothing but benefit anyone in conversation that he could. And we'll see, people very much against him. He says, "Look, I understand. I am not unaware of the enmity that I'm generating in you by demonstrating that you could just be thinking like I am and use your brain instead of wanting to pretend you know more than you do. I know that you hate me for that, but I'm not going to lie to you so that I'll flatter you and leave you in a miserable place. I'm going to be your true friend and I'm going to say, "Hey, anytime you want to come back and have the conversation, we're ready to listen because I don't know and maybe you figured it out in the meantime. But we're not going to pretend and flatter you for no reason." So he's being the true friend of the world, right? But in the context so Plato writes this dialogue, and you read about the Socrates who's already dead. He's already been executed, and he's telling a young man, "The world can be your friend, and you can be the world's friend." But it's in everyone reading this knows. They know who Socrates is. They claim to be everybody's friend, but that he had enmity against him as a result. And so maybe there's a little irony going on here as well. Anyway, um, irony which illuminates the nature of truly being someone's friend, doing what's actually will make the world a better place rather than allow miserable people to be contented in their misery as long as they can blame someone else or something like that, or distract or hallucinate or demonize and say, "It's those people on the right. It's those people on the left." Yeah, well, I know why you have to keep saying that, says Socrates. You're distracting from the fact that there's something missing in you. You don't, there's the good and you could have it. And then the other thing Socrates said is, "I got it. I know what it is. And I know that you can't harm a good man. So give me the cup. I'm thirsty. Give me the cup, I'm thirsty." This is the good life. I'm living according to truth, and the consequence of truth is that I have to be sentenced to death. Give me the cup. You think that's something bad that you've done to me? No, no, no. You're all holding on to your lives and you're losing them. You could let go and gain the ability to affect millennia in the future. Socrates' spirit still lives. Well, we'll get to that. Anyway, let's go back into this, drop back into this dialogue. And so he's bringing up a new question to start leading the youth into. And he says, And in matters of which you have no knowledge, can you even have the conceit of knowledge? Now, this is an important philosophical question because if Socrates is using criticism or skepticism to ask questions and tear things down, and he's saying, I don't know. Well, the question is posed to him: if you don't know anything about justice, how can you even start trying to figure it out? How would you know whether or not you are just pursuing injustice and calling it justice? If you really know nothing, you must know something. There must be a starting point, or your method is a bad way of trying to get to the truth, right? This is a thing that's been brought up in other contexts. And Socrates is here bringing it up and saying, now, wait a minute, if you don't have any knowledge of these things, do you even have the beginning of pointing in the right direction of knowledge, perhaps? And the youth says, that's impossible, he replied. And you, Ulysses, if you require a teacher, have not yet attained to wisdom, right? Oh, true. And therefore you are not conceited. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what a conceit of knowledge was. So if you have not knowledge, you also have no conceit of knowledge, which means you have no right to claim that you have knowledge. That's all it is. Okay, fine. Therefore you are not conceited, having nothing of which to be conceited. Indeed, Socrates, I think not, says the wise youth. When I heard him say this, I turned to Hippothales and was very nearly making a blunder. For I was going to say to him, that is the way, Hippothales, in which you should talk to your beloved, humbling and lowering him, and not as you do, puffing him up and spoiling him. But I saw that he was in great excitement and confusion at what had been said, and I remembered that, although he was in the neighborhood, he did not want to be seen by Lyces, so upon second thoughts I refrained. In the meantime, Menexenus came back and sat down in his place by Lyces, and Lyces, in a childish and affectionate manner, whispered privately in my ear, so that Menexenus should not hear. Do, Socrates, tell Menexenus what you have been telling me. Suppose that you tell him yourself, Lyces, I replied, for I am sure that you are attending. Certainly, he replied. Try then to remember the words and be as exact as you can in repeating them to him. And if you have forgotten anything, ask me again the next time that you see me. I will be sure to do so, Socrates. But go on telling him something new and let me hear as long as I am allowed to stay. All right. There's some things we're going to have to talk about. One of the other things we can talk about, though, that's being illustrated in this is quite beautiful. It's quite a beautiful dialogue. This youth that um, Hippothales is in love with, smitten by at least, is very wise. He's listening, he's paying attention, he's not getting offended at the idea that perhaps he doesn't know things, he's not looking to look good. Socrates starts testing their friendship. He saw that he was good. Remember, he said, I saw that he was as good as he was fair. So he saw it from afar away. He's like, oh, I see the way he's acting with his friends. That's a good young man. We could give some wisdom to him, help him along because he's got a good start going here. And then he immediately zeroed in on his friendship with Menexenus. And he started asking them, which of you is wiser? Which of you is fairer? Which of you is juster? Which of you is more beautiful? Which of right? And he couldn't get them to be competitive in a bad way. It's a good sign. And then he also told them, he said, hey, you're both as rich as each other, right? Because if you're really friends, as you say you are, you would have everything in common, right? Your friend needs a dollar, he's got a debt to pay, you're there to help. So you're both equally rich together. Promise you, I have never watched an entire video of Andrew Tate, but I've seen people talk about him and his brother always act like it's us against the world kind of thing. So I hate to bring up allusions to popular things when I don't even really know anything about them, but it's like you guys are like the Tate brothers. It's you two together against the world. I don't know what that really means because again, I haven't watched any of that. But in any event, it's that idea. I've seen Andrew write posts on Twitter about like, it's us against the world kind of a thing. Who knows? I have no judgment on any of that. I have no idea how sincere it is. Probably is if he's living it, but whatever. Socrates is saying something like that to Menexenus and to, excuse me, and to this beautiful Lysis, this young youth that Hippothales is smitten with. And so but he's doing that in the context of all those other things. Remember, the Platonic idea of Platonic love is it's not about pleasure, it's not about utility. So here he is telling him the way the world works is if you're useful, then people will love you, and otherwise you won't be valued for any reason. And Hippothales' perspective is pleasure. He's lusting, right? He's motivated by lust here, and he expects he's going to get what he wants, and that's partly why he's praising the youth. Socrates, remember, for Plato, Platonic love is this: we have to get to the good, and we can't until after we're dead. But we have to keep trying to get closer to relating to it properly. But we can do that with fellows whose intellectual integrity, honesty, and virtues we respect. We could say, "Look, I don't know and you don't know. Let's talk about it. Let's get closer. Let's challenge one another. Let's hold in common our own souls," right? One soul in two bodies is, I think, the phrase or the idea that's in the Republic. We'll be reading the Republic at some point, but that's one of the definitions of this Platonic kind of friendship is this idea of we're holding our souls in common. Right, so it's in the context of all those virtues. They said, "Which of you is more of this and more of that?" "Oh, we're the same," or whatever. They had that conversation, but then he said, "How about money?" He just sort of hinted at this idea that, well, you'd hold money in common with each other because 'cause you're true friends, right? That's what you said. And he must have zeroed in on the fact that they really were, in addition to the goodness of Lysis, which he picked up on, which is why this is working this way, right? In other dialogues, he says the same types of things, and you get a much worse reaction because it's not true of the person. But he can see that he could impart this type of wisdom to these youths, and that's what he's doing. Okay, so I only wanted to pause, highlight a little bit of that from the past, but pause on how beautiful it is that this youth is saying, "Hey, tell Menexus, right? I want him to have in common the knowledge and the wisdom I now have from you." And Socrates says, "I think you've been listening pretty carefully. I bet you could tell him. I bet you could tell him. If you ever forget, come seek me out. I'll tell you again. But I think you got it." Right? It's a real encouragement. It's kind of touching. And then he says, "Okay, well, tell him something new, and I wanna listen, and we'll both learn more from you now." These are very wise sponges that are like, "Hey, we could soak up some knowledge here." And you can see that there's some real pictures of Lysias being concerned with Menexenus and his level of wisdom. Hey, give to him, I'll listen in, right? It's quite beautiful. All right. Try then to remember the words and be exact as you can in repeating them. "I will be sure to do so, Socrates, but go on telling him something new and let me hear as long as I am allowed to stay." "I certainly cannot refuse," I said, "since you ask me. But then, as you know, Menexenus is very pugnacious, and therefore you must come to the rescue if he attempts to upset me. All right?" "Yes, indeed," he said. "He is very pugnacious, and that is the reason why I want you to argue with him." "That I may make a fool of myself?" says Socrates. "No, indeed," he said, "but I want you to put him down." "That's no easy matter," I replied, "for he is a terrible fellow, a pupil of Ctesippus. And there is Ctesippus himself. Do you see him?" "Never mind, Socrates, you shall argue with him." "Well, I suppose that I must," I replied. Whereupon Ctesippus complained that we were talking in secret and keeping the feast to ourselves. "I shall be happy," I said, "to let you have a share." Here is Lysis, who does not understand something that I was saying and wants me to ask Menexenus, who, as he thinks, is likely to know. Right? That's even a lie, right? That's not what was happening between them. So Socrates is really taking the young boy into a confidence, and there's a real intimacy in their conversation there. Okay. Oh, all right. I'll do what you said. Let's get it started. I was being asked a question, and he wants me to ask some Menexenus, who he thinks is likely to know the answer. "And why do you not ask him?" he said. "Very well," I said. I will. I will. And do you, Menexenus, answer."
But first, I must tell you that I am one who, from my childhood upward, have set my heart upon a certain thing. All people have their fancies. Some desire horses, others desire dogs. Some are fond of gold, and others of honor. Now, I have no violent desire of any of these things, but I have a passion for friends, and I would rather have a good friend than the best cock or quail in the world. I would even go further and say the best horse or dog. Yeah, by the dog of Egypt, I should greatly prefer a real friend to all the gold of Darius, or even to Darius himself. I am such a lover of friends as that. And when I see you and Lyces at your early age, so easily possessed of this treasure, and so soon he of you and you of him, I am amazed and delighted, seeing that I myself, although I am now advanced in years, am so far from having made a similar acquisition that I do not even know in what way a friend is acquired. But want to ask you a question about this, for you have experience. Tell me then, when one loves another, is the lover or the beloved the friend, or may either be the friend? Either may, I should think, be the friend of either. Do you mean, I said, that if only one of them loves the other, they are mutual friends? Yes, he said, that is my meaning. Okay, we've had too many insights here in the last few words, so we're gonna have to mention it. He saw that Lysis was good, and he started pointing at and picking at the friendship between them, right? And he was giving that wisdom to Lysis. But one of the things I'll add a comment, and you can throw this out if you want. But one of the things that I think is common or a tendency of people is that they imagine others are like themselves. So if you meet somebody and they say, well, everyone steals if they think they can get away with it, you're not learning something from that person about everyone, but you are learning something about them, right? They would like others to think that that's the case because they know what they're guilty of. They presume that others would act the same way because they don't want to think that they're lesser than others or that someone else is more virtuous than them. So they propagandize and advertise everybody's like me is essentially what they're saying. Of course, that's a miserable trick to play against yourself when you steal, I mean, because now you're constantly always worried that someone's going to take things from you because now you're living in the world where it's easier for you to think that's what everybody does than to realize that you made a mistake, that you acted foolishly. Okay. Bad people and good people alike assume, I think, at least when they're young or if they're as wise as I am or less wise, maybe there are wiser people who understood not to make this mistake. But even though they see different types of people and they see people they admire, they tend to easily make the assumption that everybody else is like them. And that might be a problem for someone as good as Lyses. He's naive, he's young, and there's something about his friend that's a little bit maybe taking advantage of the friendship kind of a thing. So the first thing Socrates asks is to his friend, this friend of his, he says, "Hey, are people friends if one really loves the other, but it's not mutual?" He goes, "Yeah, I think so. I think that makes a good friendship." Right? So he's revealing that that model isn't insane to him, and he thinks, "Yeah, those are friends. We're friends." Right? You love me and I love the fact that you love me, right? That kind of a thing. He might not have said that, but that kind of a thing might be the dynamic we're picking up on. Again, I haven't read this dialogue yet, but we might be picking up on that dynamic here. All right, so let's keep reading in the drama and see what happens. Yes, he said, that is my meaning. But what if the lover is not loved in return, which is a very possible case? He says, yes. Or is perhaps even hated, which is a fancy which sometimes is entertained by lovers respecting their beloved. Nothing can exceed their love. And yet they imagine either that they are not loved in return or that they are hated. Is that not true? Yes, he said, quite true. In that case, the one loves and the other is loved. Yes. Then which is the friend of which? Is the lover the friend of the beloved, whether he be loved in return or hated? Or is the beloved the friend? Or is there no friendship at all on either side unless they both love one another? There would seem to be none at all right? So this is happening quickly because it's with youths who don't really pretend to have a bunch of definitions, but it's the same formula that we've seen emerge when Socrates is talking with older people, where he says, "Look, give me your idea, let me prod it a little bit until it's pretty damn clear that you were wrong in the original, and then I'm gonna ask you again." And you say, "No, okay, yeah, it's gotta be the opposite," that type of thing. Okay. So then this notion is not in accordance with our previous one, right? You say a second ago you said that they're friends as long as one loves the other, but now you're saying, no, that doesn't sound like there's real friendship there. We were just saying, and he always does this too. We've seen this as part of his method. He is saying, I'm going along with you on this journey. I'm not saying you said the wrong thing. I'm saying we were both agreeing a moment ago that all you need is one person to love another and you got a friendship. But now it seems like we're saying the opposite. We're saying the opposite, right? So we were saying that both we were friends only if one only loved. But now, unless they both love, neither is a friend. That appears to be true, he says. Then nothing which does not love in return is beloved by a lover? I think not. Then they are not lovers of horses, right? So just to slow it down a minute, even though it's not like hard to grasp, let's see if we can go. He's reasoning with a child. He's reasoning with a naive youth. I'm not sure what the age is. It sounds 14ish to 16ish, 18ish, somewhere around there. I mean, I guess 18ish. It's a youth, right? It's not a person playing with coloring books, but it's a person who likes to play gambling games and drafts and dice and like poker. That's their pastime, is that type of thing. In any event, the first thing he says is, "All right, so if one person loves another, they're both friends." Yeah, that's what I think. Well, what if the one loves the other, but the other hates him in return or secretly hates him? You know that could happen, right? Does it sound to you then that they're both friends? He goes, "No, it sounds to me like neither of them are friends." Well, neither? Maybe one is a friend to the other, but the other not in return, right? So he's going to start prodding in that direction because he says, "So wait a minute, hold on. If neither is a friend, then nothing which does not love in return is beloved by a lover," right? Are you saying that the lover doesn't really love the one, the beloved, just because he's not loved in return? And he says, yeah, I think that must be the case, right? In his mind, this perhaps less wise youth, perhaps psychopathic, who knows? But this youth who can easily imagine being loved but not really loving in return, um, he says, "Yeah, I guess there's no love there." So it's almost like he's on the side of not really knowing how to love, quite frankly, right? Because Socrates' response, he only understands the other side of it. He can see if someone is loving and is loving him, and then he's like, "Ah, I'm in. We got a friendship here." But if you take that away, he just figures, well, there's no love left because the other side, right? So he isn't really seeing from the perspective of the lover, it seems. Okay, but then Socrates says, "Well, but that would mean that lovers don't really love unless they're loved in return." And he says, "Yeah, I think so." And he says, "Then they are not lovers of horses, whom the horses do not love in return, nor lovers of quails, nor of dogs, nor of wine, nor of gymnastic exercises, who have no return of love. No, nor of wisdom, unless wisdom loves them in return." Or shall we say that they do love them, although they are not beloved by them, and that the poet was wrong who sings, "Happy the man to whom his children are dear, and steeds having single hoofs, and dogs of chase, and the stranger of another land." I do not think that he was wrong. You think that he was right? Yes. Then, Menexenus, the conclusion is that what is beloved, whether loving or hating, may be dear to the lover of it. For example, very young children, too young to love, or even hating their father or mother when they are punished by them, are never dearer to them than at the time when they are being hated by them. I think that what you say is true, says Menexenus, right? A little baby, "Oh, I hate you, mommy." That child is deeply loved by the mother who's going out of her way to try to train the damn child in a way that will allow them to live a good life, right? So you can have one-sided love, he's saying. And the kid agrees. And if so, not the lover, but the beloved is the friend or dear one. Yes, he says. And the hated one, and not the hater, is the enemy, clearly. Then many men are loved by their enemies and hated by their friends. And are the friends so if that context of the hints of the drama were true, he's saying it quite directly to him now and in front of Lyses. Then many men are loved by their enemies and hated by their friends, and are the friends of their enemies and the enemies of their friends. Yet how absurd, my dear friend, or indeed impossible, is this paradox of a man being an enemy to his friend or a friend to his enemy? I quite agree, Socrates, in what you say. But if this cannot be, the lover will be the friend of that which is loved. True, he says. And the hater will be the enemy of that which is hated? Certainly. Yet we must acknowledge in this, as in the preceding instance, all right, so in those last two paragraphs, he was keeping with the old formula and seeing how absurd it leads you to the idea. Okay, fine. And he says, "Well, get it right now." And he's like, yeah, I'm on board. The one who loves is a true friend to the thing he loves, to the beloved, and the one who hates is an enemy to the thing he hates, even if they're in a pair. Yet we must acknowledge in this, as in the preceding instance, says Socrates, that a man may be the friend of one who is not his friend, or who may be his enemy when he loves that which does not love him, or which even hates him. And he may be the enemy of one who is not his enemy, and is even his friend. For example, when he hates that which does not hate him, or which even loves him. Remember the context we talked about before. Menexenus says that appears to be true. But if the lover is not a friend, nor the beloved a friend, nor both together, what are we to say? Whom are we to call friends to one another? Do any remain? Indeed, Socrates, I cannot find any. All right, so he's done a disjunctive syllogism and then negated all of the options because the boy had said, there is no friendship there if only one loves, which he changed his mind to. He says there's no friendship at all. But oh, Menexenus, I said, may we not have been altogether wrong in our conclusions? Right? So now there's another absurdity, right? So Socrates is not telling him what to think, but he's allowing him to do his thinking and kind of allowing it to be guided by the fact he's pointing out, oh, look, we got to another absurdity right away. Our other absurdity is they're both friends, neither are friends. Um, they're both friends and enemies in the same sense, in the same way, which is self contradictory. It can't be this, it can't be this, it can't be that. Why? Because you said it wasn't this, you said it wasn't this, and you said it wasn't this, and those are the only options. So maybe we made a mistake in our reasoning. Perhaps we should figure it out. I am sure that we have been wrong, Socrates, said Lysis. So Lysis interjects himself, and he blushed as he spoke, the words seeming to come from his lips involuntarily, because his whole mind was taken up with the argument. There was no mistaking his attentive look while he was listening. I was pleased at the interest which was shown by Lyses, and I wanted to give Menexenus a rest. So I turned to him and said, I think, Lyses, that what you say is true, that we've made a mistake, and that if we had been right, we should never have gone so far wrong. Let us proceed no further in this direction, for the road seems to be getting troublesome. But take the other path into which we turned and see what the poets have to say. That was the other thing they had done. They brought up poetry. Let's go there. For they are to us, in a manner, the fathers and authors of wisdom, and they speak of friends in no light or trivial manner. But God Himself, as they say, makes them and draws them to one another. And this they express, if I am not mistaken, in the following words. God is ever drawing like towards like and making them acquainted. I dare say that you have heard these words. Yes, he said, I have. And have you not also met with the treatises of philosophers who say that like must love like? They are the people who argue and write about nature and the universe. Very true, he replied. And are they right in saying this? He's talking about the physicists and the other natural philosophers. Those are the subjects Socrates had given up, but he's referring to the boys' studies in poetry and religion, mythology and physics and science. Everybody seems to agree. Like dissolves like likes like. These are true chemical principles that are still used today. Okay, very true, he replied. And are they right in saying this? They may be, says Lyses. Perhaps, I said. About half, or possibly altogether right, if their meaning were rightly apprehended by us. For the more a bad man has to do with a bad man, and the more nearly he is brought into contact with him, the more he will be likely to hate him, for he injures him. And injurer and injured cannot be friends. Is that not true? Yes, he said. Then one half of the saying is untrue. If the wicked are like one another, that is true. So we're going to see something here, it seems, which is interesting because Socrates had this idea that he gave up on physics and chemistry and the other natural philosophical pursuits. He even gave up on mathematics. He said, "I figured out enough about it to know it's not going to get me the ultimate answers that I really want. Instead, I've committed myself to this subject of ethics and good, honest conversation about what the good truly is and what its nature is, and it's characterological. It's something to try to manifest. It's like you get closer to this personality and you get more like it, something like that. In any event, um, you're more familiar with it. That's a good word for it. You're more familiar with it. You can see other things that participate with it. And so he's now saying, well, all the physicists and the chemists, the natural philosophers, right, in the large category, the religions, they're all saying the same thing. Like attracts like. Let's see if that's true. It must be true. The great poets said so, even the scientists. But maybe we're not understanding it correctly. This is what he likes to do when he disagrees with something or with the common understanding of something. He doesn't say it's definitely not true. He says, let's look for the way to understand it that would make it true. And well, it must not mean this. Well, what does he mean? He says, well, criminals don't like each other. They're not happy to be around when they're enemies with each other, stealing from each other and everything. So that half of the saying must not be true. The bad likes the bad. And the boy says that's true. But the real meaning of the saying, right? Instead of saying, well, I know better, he subtly and with seduction sort of interjects. Perhaps this would be a higher way of interpreting that thing that people quote all the time. That must be wise. It's like coming to us from the grand prophetic fathers of the past. It must be the truth, but what it must mean, as I imagine, is that the good are like one another, friends to one another, and that the bad, as is often said of them, are never at unity with one another or with themselves, for they are passionate and restless, and anything which is at variance and enmity with itself is not likely to be in union or harmony with any other thing. Do you not agree? I do, he says. Yes. Then, my friend, those who say that the like is friendly to the like mean to intimate, if I rightly apprehend them, that the good only is the friend of the good, and of him only, but that the evil never attains to any real friendship, either with the good or evil. Do you agree? He nodded assent. Then now we know how to answer the question who are friends, for the argument declares that the good are friends. Yes, he said, that is true. Yes, I replied. And yet I am not quite satisfied with this answer. By heaven. And shall I tell you what I suspect? I will. Assuming that like, inasmuch as he is like, is the friend of like and useful to him, or rather, let me try another way of putting the matter. Can like do any good or harm to like, which he could not do to himself, or suffer anything from his like, which he would not suffer from himself. And if neither can be of any use to the other, how can they be loved by one another? Can they? They cannot, the voice suggests. And can he who is not loved be a friend? Certainly not. But say that the like is not the friend of the like, insofar as he is like. Still, the good may be the friend of the good, insofar as he is good. True. But then again, will not the good, insofar as he is good, be sufficient for himself? Certainly he will. And he who is sufficient wants nothing that is implied by the word sufficient. Well, of course not. And he who wants nothing will desire nothing? He will not. Neither can he love that which he does not desire. He cannot. And he who not is not a lover of friend, probably, or friend. Certainly not. What place then is there for friendship if, when absent, good men have no need of one another, or even when alone they are sufficient for themselves, and when present have no use of one another? How can such persons ever be induced to value one another? They cannot. And friends they cannot be, says Socrates, unless they value one another. Very true. But see now, Lyses, whether we are not being deceived in all of this. Are we not indeed entirely wrong? How so? He replied. Have I not heard someone say, as I just now recollect, that the like is the greatest enemy of the like, the good of the good? Yes. And he quoted the authority of Hesiod, who says, Potter quarrels with potter, hard should be barred with bard, beggar with beggar. And of all other things he affirmed in like manner, that of necessity, the most like are most full of envy, strife, and hatred of one another, and the most unlike of friendship. For the poor man is compelled to be the friend of the rich, and the weak requires the aid of the strong, and the sick man of the physician. And everyone who is ignorant has to love and court him who knows. And indeed, he went on to say in grandiloquent language that the idea of friendship existing between similars is not the truth, but the very reverse of the truth, and that the most opposed are the most friendly. For that everything desires not like, but that which is most unlike. For example, the dry desires the moist, the cold, the hot, the bitter, the sweet, the sharp, the blunt, the void, the full, the void. And so of all other things. Wow. For the opposite is the food of the opposite. Whereas like receives nothing from like. And I thought that he who said this was a charming man and that he spoke well. What do you, what do the rest of you say? Okay, that's a passage we'll highlight and we'll come talk about more later. We'll follow along still. Oh, got enough out of it. All right. I should say at first hearing that he is right, said Menexenus. Then we are to say that the greatest friendship is of opposites? Exactly. Yes, Menexenus. He's talking to Menexenus again now. But will not that be a monstrous answer? And will not the all wise Aristics be down upon us in triumph and ask fairly enough whether love is not the very opposite of hate? And what answer shall we make to them? Must we not admit that they speak the truth? We must. Love is the opposite of hate. They will then proceed to ask us whether enemy is the friend of the friend or the friend of the friend of the enemy. Neither, he replied. Well, but is a just man the friend of the unjust, or the temperate of the intemperate, or the good of the bad? I do not see how that is possible, he says. And yet, I said, If friendship goes by contraries and contraries must be friends, they must, he reaffirms, then neither like and like nor unlike and unlike are friends. Once again, it seems like friendship is impossible. I suppose not, he replied. And yet, there's a further consideration. May not all these notions of friendship be erroneous? May but may not that which is neither good nor evil still in some cases be the friend of the good? How do you mean? He said. Why, really, I said. The truth is that I do not know. But my head is dizzy with thinking of the argument, and therefore I hazard the conjecture that the beautiful is the friend. As the old proverb says, beauty is certainly a soft, smooth, slippery thing, and therefore of a nature which easily slips in and permeates our souls. For I affirm that the good is the beautiful. Will you agree with that? Yes. This, I say, from a sort of notion that what is neither good nor evil is the friend of the beautiful and the good, and I will tell you why I am inclined to think so. I assume that there are three principles: the good, the bad, and that which is neither good nor bad. You would agree, would you not? I agree. And neither is the good the friend of the good, nor the evil of the good, nor the good of the evil. These alternatives are excluded by the previous argument, and therefore, if there be such a thing as friendship or love at all, we must infer that what is neither good nor evil must be the friend, either of the good or of that which is neither good nor evil, for nothing can be the friend of the bad. True, but neither can like be the friend of like, as we were just now saying. True. And if so, that which is neither good nor evil can have no friend, which is neither good nor evil. Certainly not. Then the good alone is the friend of that only which is neither good nor evil. That may be assumed to be certain, he says, right? Ooh, well, we proved the other two don't work. So it must be something that's neither good nor bad that is the friend of the good. Okay. And does not this seem to put us in the right way? Just remark that the body, which is in health, requires neither medical nor any other aid, but is well enough. And the healthy man has no love of the physician because he is in health. He has none, he replies. But the sick loves him because he is sick, certainly. And sickness is an evil, and the art of medicine a good and useful thing? Yes. But the human body, regarded as a body, is neither good nor evil. True. And the body is compelled by reason of disease to court and make friends of the art of medicine. Yes, that's right. Then that which is neither good nor evil becomes the friend of good by reason of the presence of evil? Yeah, that's what we can infer. Clearly, this must have happened before that which is neither good nor evil had become altogether corrupted with the element of evil. If itself had become evil, it would not still desire and love the good. For as we were saying, the evil cannot be the friend of the good. Well, that's impossible. Further, I must observe that some substances are assimilated when others are present within them. And there are some which are not assimilated. Take, for example, the case of an ointment or color which is put in on another substance. Yeah, very good. I know what you're talking about. In such a case, is the substance which is anointed the same as the color or ointment? What do you mean? He said. This is what I mean. Suppose that I were to cover your auburn locks with white lead. Would they be really white or would they only appear to be white? They would only appear to be white, he replied. And yet whiteness would be present in them, right? True. But that would not make them at all the more white, notwithstanding the presence of white in them. Would not be white any more than black. No. But when old age infuses whiteness into them, then they become assimilated and are white by the presence of white. Certainly. Now, I am to know whether in all cases a substance of assimilated a substance is assimilated by the presence of another substance, or must the presence be after a peculiar sort. The latter, he said. Then that which is neither good nor evil may be in the presence of evil, but not as yet evil. And that has happened before now. Yes. Then that which is neither good nor evil may be in the presence of evil, but not as yet evil. And that has happened before now. Yes. And when and then Socrates says, and when anything is in the presence of evil, not being as yet evil itself, the presence of good arouses the desire of good in that thing. But the presence of evil, which makes a thing evil, takes away the desire and friendship of the good. For that which was once both good and evil has now become evil only. And the good was supposed to have no friendship with the evil, none. And therefore, we say that those who are already wise, whether gods or men, are no longer lovers of wisdom, nor can they be lovers of wisdom who are ignorant to the extent of being evil. For no evil or ignorant person is a lover of wisdom. There remain those who have the misfortune to be ignorant, but are not yet hardened in their ignorance or void of understanding, and do not as yet fancy that they know what they do not know. And therefore, those who are the lovers of wisdom are as yet neither good nor bad, but the bad do not love wisdom any more than the good. For, as we have already seen, neither is unlike the friend of unlike, nor like of like. You remember that, right? Okay, let's pause. So, one thing that we could have talked about before and would be worth talking about now, since we just got another good example of it in this paragraph, is that occasionally the arguments that Socrates is making are a little bit hard for us to follow by dint of the fact that he's thinking in a very different way than we're used to thinking. What we can say is careful examination reveals that he is making a serious and usually quite profound point. So I want to take a pause because we're at least three quarters done here. But I do want to talk about this, and maybe we'll analyze this paragraph in this argument, because realizing that you can approach, there's times where there are paragraphs in Socrates where it's like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? The same of the sameness is same because of the same, but not because of the different. I mean, it sounds like that from time to time, and it can give us a headache. And Socrates says, my head is spinning. It's like, okay, um, there are some notions that he uses that he explains in some passages, which will help us to make sense of it, help make clear some of those paragraphs. I will say that it's my experience that some of those paragraphs are really, really profoundly significant and fundamental to the whole way that he's thinking. They're really worth understanding. So there are times when we'll read through his dialogues where we get past a paragraph or two, we're like, whatever. I'll just take for granted that what you're saying made sense because I want to keep following the argument to get somewhere. But there's really a core principle in there that is illuminating in the way that we can understand that Socrates is thinking. So I tell you what, since we're nearing on 2 hours already, we won't analyze this paragraph now. We'll just put a little bookmark on it. And there's been a few others probably that we could have had bookmarked in the previous three dialogues. Uh, but let's try to finish this by the 2 hours, and we'll go to that live Twitter Spaces that we've scheduled for 15 minutes from now, where we finish the dialogue and we'll go and chat together, and everybody grab a mic. Okay, so let's see where it goes. Yes, they both said. And so Lyses and Menexenus, we have discovered the nature of friendship. There can be no doubt of it. Friendship is the love which, by reason of the presence of evil, the neither good nor evil has of the good, either in the soul or in the body or anywhere. The good is sufficient unto itself. We pursue the good because we aren't there yet. We're not going to get there until possibly after our deaths, remember, he says in another dialogue. We're trying to get at the good qua good, the source of all being, truth, justice, goodness, and love. That thing doesn't need anything in Socrates' perspective. Although, well, in Socrates' perspective, that thing doesn't need anything in this argument. Let's leave it at that for now. Now, that's where he's aiming. Plato's aiming, at least. A good, or I'm sorry, friendship is not like liking like or like liking opposites. Friendship is only possible with this whole set of circumstances. You have to not be fully good or fully evil yet. You have to be in the presence of evil and you have to want and aim towards the good. Then you can be friends with someone else who's aimed in that way too, because you need something from each other. You need to have conversation. You need to have someone to bounce ideas off of. You need someone to tell you when you're making a mistake because you're not infinite. You're limited. You're making, but you're trying to get away from an infinite abyss into an infinite light. We're going to use different words to just illustrate, right, from maybe our more familiar type of language. Okay. They both agreed and entirely assented. And for a moment I rejoiced and was satisfied like a huntsman, just holding fast his prey. But then a most unaccountable suspicion came across me, and I felt that the conclusion was untrue. I was pained and said, Alas, Lyses and Menexenus, I am afraid that we have been grasping at a shadow only. Why do you say so? Said Menexenus. I am afraid, I said, that the argument about friendship is false. Arguments, like men, are often pretenders. How do you mean? He said. Well, I said, look at the matter in this way. A friend is the friend of someone, is he not? Certainly he is. And has he a motive and object in being a friend, or has he no motive and object? He has a motive and an object. This is Menidas. It has to be, right? It's Menexenus, I mean. And is the object which makes him a friend dear to him, neither dear nor hateful to him? I do not quite follow you, he said. I do not wonder at all, I said. But perhaps, if I put the matter in another way, you will be able to follow me, and my own meaning will be clearer even to myself. The sick man, as I was just now saying, is the friend of the physician, is he not? Yes. And he is the friend of the physician because of disease and for the sake of health. Yes. And the disease is an evil, certainly. And what of health? I said. Is that a good or an evil or neither? Well, it's a good, he replied. And we were saying, I believe, that the body being neither good nor evil because of disease, that is to say, because of evil, is the friend of medicine. And medicine is a good. And medicine has entered into this friendship for the sake of health. And health is a good. True. And is health a friend or not a friend? Well, it's a friend. And disease is an enemy. Yes. Then that which is neither good nor evil is the friend of the good because of the evil and hateful, and for the sake of the good and the friend. Well, clearly. But that means that the friend is a friend for the sake of the friend and because of the enemy. Well, that follows. That has to be inferred, he says. Then at this point, my boys, let us take heed and be on our guards against deceptions. Be on our guard against deceptions. I will not again repeat that the friend is the friend of the friend and the like of the like, which has been declared by us to be an impossibility. But in order that this new statement may not delude us, let us attentively examine another point, which I will proceed to explain. Medicine, as we were saying, is a friend dear to us for the sake of health, right? Yes, they say. And health is also dear? Yes, certainly. And if dear, then dear for the sake of something. Yes. And surely this object must also be dear, as is implied in our previous admissions. Well, yeah. And so whatever health is good for must itself be dear. He goes, yeah. And that something dear involves something else dear, right? Yeah. But then proceeding in this way, we shall not arrive at some first principle of friendship or dearness. which is not capable of being referred to any other, for the sake of which, as we maintain, all other things are dear. And having there arrived, we shall stop. Well, that's true. If everything, all right, so he's saying if everything is dear to us because of what it gets us, well, what does it get us? It gets us something that's dear to us. Why is it dear to us? Because of something that it gets us. That can't possibly be right because you got an infinite regress. There must be something valuable for its own sake. There must be something beautiful for its own sake. There must be something good just because it is, not because it's useful for something else. That's what he's going to get. That's what he's getting at. All right. My fear is that all those other things, which, as we say, are dear for the sake of another, are illusions and deceptions only. But where that first principle is, there is the true ideal of friendship. Let me put the matter thus. Suppose the case of a great treasure. This may be a son who is more precious to his father than all his other treasures. Would not the father who values his son above all things value other things also for the sake of his son? I mean, for instance, if he knew that his son had drunk hemlock and the father thought that wine would save him, he would value the wine. Let's pause again, not about the hemlock thing, just to remind ourselves that in this entire conversation about friendship, Plato's talking to these two young boys, knowing, I'm not going to pronounce his name correctly. Hold on. Knowing that Heraclitus, shoot, excuse me, I feel so bad about this. Knowing that Hippothales is listening in, right? So there's another whole dynamic to this entire drama that we might have in mind as we're going when he talks about benefiting things in your love and loving for the sake of the other. And is there a thing that's good for its own sake, right? All of this. Someone else is listening the whole time. Okay. Let us put the matter thus. Suppose that the greatest of treasure, this might be a son who is more precious to his father than all its other treasures. Would not the father who values his son above all things value other things also for the sake of his son? I mean, for instance, if he knew that his son had drunk hemlock and that the father knew that wine would cure him, would he not value the wine also? He would. And also the vessel which contains the wine, certainly. But does he therefore value the three measures of wine, or the earthen vessel which contains them, equally well with his son? Is not this rather the true state of the case? All his anxiety has regard not to the means which are provided for the sake of an object, but to the object for the sake of which they are provided. And although he may often say that gold and silver are highly valued by us, that is not the truth, for there is a further object, whatever it may be, which we value most of all, and for the sake of which gold and all our other possessions are acquired by us. Am I not right? Yes, certainly, the boys say. And may not the same be said of the friend? That which is only dear to us for the sake of something else is improperly said to be dear. But the truly dear is that in which all these so called dear friendships terminate. That, he said, seems necessary now. That seems to be the case. And the truly dear or ultimate principle of friendship is not for the sake of any other or further dear. True. Then we have done with the notion of friendship, that friendship has any other object. May we then infer that the good is the friend? I think so. And the good is loved for the sake of the evil. Let me put the case in this way. Suppose that of these three principles, good, evil, and that which is neither good nor evil, there remain only the good and the neutral, and that evil went far away and in no way affected soul or body, nor ever at all that class of things which, as we say, are neither good nor evil in themselves. Would the good be of any use or other than useless to us? For if there were nothing to hurt us any longer, we should have no need of anything that would do us good. Then would be clearly seen that we did but love and desire the good because of the evil, and as the remedy of the evil, which was the disease. But if there had been no disease, there would have been no need of the remedy. Is not this the nature of the good, to be loved by us who are placed between the two because of the evil? But there is no use in the good for its own sake. I suppose not. Then the final principle of friendship, in which all other friendships terminate, those, I mean, which are relatively dear and for the sake of something else, is of another and a different nature from them. For they are all called dear because of another dear or friend. But with the true friend or dear, the case is quite the reverse. For that is proved to be dear because of the hated. And if the hated were away, it would no longer be dear. Very true, he replied. At any rate, not if our present view holds good. But oh, will you tell me, I said, whether if evil were to perish, we should hunger any more, or thirst any more, or have any similar desire? Or may we suppose that hunger will remain while men and animals remain, but not so as to be hurtful? And the same of thirst and the other desires, that they will remain, but will not be evil, because evil has perished. Or rather, shall I say, that to ask what either will be then or will not be is ridiculous, for who knows? This we do know, that in our present condition, hunger may injure us and may also benefit us. Is that not true? Yes. And in like manner, thirst or any similar desire may sometimes be a good and sometimes an evil to us, sometimes neither one nor the other, to be sure. But is there any reason why, because evil perishes, that which is not evil should perish with it? None. Then, even if evil perishes, the desires, which are neither good nor evil, will remain? Most clearly they will. And must not a man love that which he desires and affects? He must. Then, even if evil perishes, there may still remain some elements of love or friendship, right? Because it's based off these things that are neither good nor evil. And he says, yes. But if evil is the cause of friendship, for in that case, nothing will be the friend of any other thing after the destruction of evil, for the effect cannot remain when the cause is destroyed. True. And have we not admitted already that the friend loves something for a reason? And at the time of making the admission, we were of opinion that the neither good nor evil loves the good because of the evil. Yeah, that's what we said. But now our view is changed, and we conceive that there must be some other cause of friendship. I suppose so. May not the truth be rather, as we were just now saying, that desire is the cause of friendship? For that which desires is dear to that which is desired at the time of desiring it. And may not the other theory have been only a long story about nothing? So he's just going, this is almost like an inverse of the Euthyphro, right? Euthyphro goes from one definition to another and he keeps knocking them down. In this one, Socrates is making up one possibility after another. He's saying, like, hey, we're all lost. Maybe friendship is this. Maybe friendship's based in this. Maybe it's like this. Well, if it's like this, it must be based in the good or the evil or in the neither. He's just blowing them all out of the water and saying, all right, that one doesn't work. Well, maybe it's desire that's the basis of friendship. Likely enough, the boy says. But surely, I said, he who desires, desires that of which he is in want. Yes. And that of which he is in want is dear to him, right? True. And he is in want of that of which he is deprived. Certainly. Then love and desire and friendship would appear to be of the natural or congenial. Such, Laces and Menexus, is the inference. They assented. Then, if you are friends, you must have natures which are congenial to one another. Certainly, they both said. And I say, my boys, that no one who loves or desires another would ever have loved or desired or affected him if he had not been in some way congenial to him, either in his soul or in his character, in his manners or in his form. Yes, yes, said Menexenus. But Lysis was silent. Then I said, The conclusion is that what is of a congenial nature must be loved. It follows, he said. Then the lover, who is true and no counterfeit, must of necessity be loved by his love. Laces and Menexus gave a faint assent to this, and Hippothales changed into all manner of colors with delight. Here, intending to revise the argument, I said, can we point out any difference between the congenial and the like? Right? We're going right back to like, likes, like, right? What's the difference between being congenial and just going back to saying like, likes, like? For if that is possible, then I think Laces and Menexenus, there may be some sense in our argument about friendship. But if the congenial is only the like, how will you get rid of the other argument of the uselessness of like to like in as far as they are like? For to say that what is useless is dear would be absurd. Suppose then that we agree to distinguish between the congenial and the like in the intoxication of argument that may perhaps be allowed. So we've seen something a little bit new here. It's never been quite as sharply shown to us as in this dialogue yet from the ones we've read, which is that agreeing that something follows, right? This is all for the sake of argument. That's a really good phrase for this. Like, we've seen Socrates make a whole big case. It has to be like this, and then destroy it and say, well, it can't be like that. Well, what else is left? Well, it has to be like this. And what they're doing is he's not saying, boys, do you agree that this is like this? What he's saying is, well, if it's like this, then this follows, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then that would mean that this must be the case. Yes. Well, that means that this is the case, right? So if he starts by saying, do you affirm something? Then he takes them through all the implications. He makes them agree with all of them. But sometimes all they say is that that follows, right? So, if this one is correct so far, right, he's following where the argument leads. And so, in any case, they have an argument that liking like is the source of friendship and love doesn't work. So now they've said it's the congenial. And so there must be a distinction that we can make between congenial and like, or else that old argument against liking like not being useful, and so it couldn't possibly be the source of love, would also work against the congenial. And he says, very true. We're going to need a distinction. Okay. And shall we further say that the good is congenial and the evil uncongenial to everyone? Or again, that the evil is congenial to the evil and that the good to the good, and that which is neither good nor evil to that which is neither good nor evil? They agreed to the latter alternative. Then, my boys, if that's the case, we have again fallen into the old discarded error. For the unjust will be the friend of the unjust, and the bad of the bad, as well as the good of the good. That appears to be the result, they agree. But again, if we say that the congenial is the same as the good, in that case, the good and he only will be the friend of the good. That's true. So these are our two options. These are the implications. We had an argument against it being this way. All right. But that too was a position of ours, which, as you will remember, has already been refuted by ourselves. Neither one of these works. We remember, say the boys, then what is to be done? Or rather, is there anything to be done? I can only, like the wise men who argue in courts, sum up the arguments. If neither the beloved, nor the lover, nor the like, nor the unlike, nor the good, nor the congenial, nor any other of whom we spoke, for there were such a number of them as I cannot remember all, if none of these are the basis of friendship, I know not what remains to be said. He's in a state of perplexity. There's also a lot of irony going on here. There's a lot of touching notes of friendship and love between he and his interlocutors, between each other. He's highlighting things. There's a lot of wisdom about friendship and love that's being illustrated. And obviously, directly, you can witness it imparted, right? All of that's going on. And yet, Socrates, for a definition, is in a state of perplexity and reaffirms it. Here, I was going to invite the opinion of some older person when suddenly we were interrupted by the tutors of Lyces and Menexenus, who came upon us like an evil apparition with their brothers and bade them go home, as it was getting late. At first, we and the bystanders drove them off, but afterwards, as they would not mind and only went on shouting at their barbarous dialect, in their barbarous dialect, and got angry, and kept calling the boys. They appeared to us to have been drinking rather too much at the Hermia, which made them difficult to manage. We fairly gave way and broke up the company. So the slaves in charge of taking care of the little princeling boys. Hey, it's time to go home. They've been drinking. They come in. It's time to go. You got to go. Your parents are going to get upset at me. It's dinner time soon. Got to go. And all of the people in the conversation saying, no, shush, leave us alone. We're about to get to something really important here about friendship. And they're like, nah, and they couldn't manage them because they'd been drinking. Socrates couldn't find a way to seduce them into the conversation as he often does. So we had to just break up the party. I said, however, a few words to the boys at parting. Oh, Menexenus and Lysis, how ridiculous that you two boys and I, an old boy, who would fain be one of you, should imagine ourselves to be friends. This is what the bystanders will go away and say. And as yet, we have not been able to discover what is a friend. It's kind of cute. He's I mean, so much attention he's giving to these boys and so much he's encouraging them and praising and noticing their virtues. They've become friends, right? So he's highlighting this. He's saying, "We don't even know the definition of friend or how it's even possible. What a magical thing that it seems like we've become friends." They'll say, "How silly to think that we're friends." Well, what do they know? What do we know? For all we know, it's possible. We have no idea how friendship is possible. We've disproved all the ways it could be based in something, but that doesn't leave us with it doesn't exist. That leaves us with a this is a magical thing we can't understand because we also disproved the things that would make it seem like it was a fake thing or it was based in something shallow. I mean, we've disproved all of the possibilities. So something magical about that friendship thing. You guys remember that, boys, as you go away together. So that's I've never read this dialogue before. It's quite touching. Um, there's a lot going on here. Instead of me babbling on any further, what we're going to do is go open up the promised Twitter space. So we're going to go open up a spaces in Twitter where anybody who joins can grab a mic. I'm going to go make that live right now. In fact, I'll do it right before I end this thing here so that you know it's live and you can go find it. Hopefully, it hasn't gotten deleted. I couldn't find it earlier. Oh, come on. Where is the space? All right. I never successfully scheduled it properly. So I'm just going to say spaces. We're going to create Plato Symposium After Party. Let's call it After Party this time. That sounds fun. Okay. Philosophy, education, fictional literature. It won't be recorded. I'm starting it now and I'm going to end the live stream. So I'll see y'all there and we'll chat some more. Keep the conversation going.